Kevin,
Yes.
thank you so much for meeting for this interview today.
Thank you for coming on my bus.
Yeah, this is a pretty cool bus, man. Very excited to be here. I just have a few questions for you about your campaign. Very excited about what I've been reading. So yeah, I thought I would meet you and just ask you some questions. Sound good?
Yeah.
All right, so I was just wondering if you could tell me a little bit about yourself and your campaign. Yeah, what sets you apart from your opponents in the Senate race?
So I like to say I walk the walk on my values. I believe the most important issue facing our country today is the unlimited role of money in politics. Money is corrupting and it overshadows everything. It's the only criteria that matters for candidates' viability. And so we elect the best fundraisers, not the best candidates. And that's why our government doesn't work for us. It works for the 1%. Because 1% literally fund 80% of all political campaigns. And that's 1% of 12% of people who actually donate. So it's even smaller percentage of people. And so my theory in this campaign was if we want to take money out of politics, we need to elect people who are not beholden on big money in politics. And so we literally just pass a hat around at union halls and town hall meetings, and that's how we keep this bus running, that's how we keep it fueled. And I am walking the walk. So I'm not saying that I want to take money out of politics while trying to put as much into my own campaign. I'm literally only raising what I need to keep this bus on the road to canvass across the state.
Yeah, and your philosophy, how does that set you apart from your candidates?
I think people can see it. It's radically authentic as opposed to saying one thing and doing another. It's a tale as old as time with politicians. We see them overpromise, and then they don't deliver because the moneyed interests behind them are really the ones that are influencing them, not so much public opinion.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I know there's that one graph of like how much public opinion affects policy versus, corporations. And
Totally.
It's pretty much like public opinion doesn't affect it as much as it should.
Unless there's money behind it.
Right.
Yeah.
How unfortunate.
Yeah.
So you have an interesting resume, 10 plus years in the Marines, seen combat, and also many years as a social studies teacher for Chicago Public Schools. You have degrees from both Oxford and Georgetown in diplomacy and national security.
Mm-hmm.
How have these experiences shaped you into the progressive you are today? And especially in regards to your military service, as I don't think many people see former military members as progressives, typically.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a conservative lean in both veterans and the active duty community. For me, being a veteran is what really showed me what the government is capable of doing. So I went to Georgetown and Oxford on the GI Bills. The government paid for it. In fact, I got paid to go to school because you get a housing allowance.
Mm-hmm.
And then I received my health care through the VA. It's free. And I know wherever I go in the country, there's going to be a VA hospital that I have access to. Now, I'm lucky because my generation, towards the tail end of the global war on terror, the VA is much better now than it was before.
Mm.
There's a lot of horror stories that were very valid about VA health before, but I've had a great experience with VA health. And so my experience as a veteran is if the government can do all this for me, why can't we do it for everyone? And the simple answer to it is, well, it's a mathematical question. Can we afford it? Can we provide the same benefits we give to our veterans to all Americans? And I think in the wealthiest country in the world, we can. I don't think we're limited by resources. I think we're limited by will and political will. And so that is what has made me the progressive I am today.
Wow, great answer. Yeah, I'll say as somebody that has military members in my family, my brother literally left the Chair Force, as he calls it. He left the Air Force a couple of years ago, and now because of the GI Bill, he's been able to go back to school. He's now in his graduate degree studying biochem. So yeah,
I mean, it's transformative, right? The veterans' benefits are transformative, and now there's certainly veterans themselves. It's a good community of people who are go-getters and ambitious and want to make an impact on the world. But I don't think we can discount just how much of a leg up we give our veterans with these benefits of being able to go use the GI Bill, not having to worry about your health care. And if you were injured in the line of duty, getting that VA claim to supplement your monthly income. Like those things are huge legs up for our veteran community. And just imagine if everyone had that opportunity. If they didn't have to worry about healthcare costs, if they could go to school for free, like how we would transform our economy and society, and just for the betterment of everyone.
Right. Yeah. Totally hear you. A unique feature of your campaign is the school bus.
Yes.
Yeah, that you purchased to travel. Yeah, you purchased to travel around the state to speak with residents from all walks of life in Illinois.
Yep.
What insights have you gained from speaking to residents in the areas of the state often ignored by Illinois politics? Have there been any interesting revelations about speaking with voters that wouldn't normally vote for a Democrat on the ballot?
I wish I had a film crew with me. It has been the most enriching experience. In 7 months, I traveled to every single county in Illinois, and I've talked to all sorts of walks of life, from deep conservative to deep progressive to independents and everything in between. And there's two things I found in common. Everyone I talk to, regardless of the state. One, no one is happy about their health care. No one. No one knows what the answer is. They don't propose an answer, but no one is happy with their health care, right? Yes. So everyone across the spectrum. And then number two, everyone is fed up with money in politics. And that's the question I often lead, especially in conservative areas. They'll see Democrat on the bus, and they'll start throwing some jabs at me, and I say, hey, hold on. Do you think billionaires, corporations, and moneyed special interests should be able to control our elections? And say, of course not. No one wants this. The ordinary people do not want this. 78% of Americans want campaign spending limits. That's why the idea of this campaign to take money out of politics, to amend the Constitution, to overrule Citizens United and Buckley versus Vallejo, this is one of the most bipartisan issues out there. We just need reformers willing to drive it home. The problem is we're not going to find those people inside Congress because the rules of the game protect them. And members of Congress are concerned principally about one thing, and that's their own reelection. That's just the fact of the matter. They fall into the trap of, if I don't get reelected, then I can't do X. They never end up doing X, but they keep saying, I just got to do this to stay in office, and then we're going to get closer. And that's why nothing gets done.
Right. I'll say, as somebody that has, unfortunately has some people that lead MAGA in my family, one uniting issue I've noticed over not just recently, but the last few decades is Citizens United. I have a distinct memory in sixth grade, my dad complaining about that. And, through the years, I think that is a huge uniting issue. What we actually do about it is another question. But I will say in my personal experience, I know many, many people, not just a few, that complain about that all the time. So I think you're right on the money there.
Yeah, it's a winning issue, too. If the Democratic Party prioritized that, we could use that to win. Because right now, there's this whataboutism. So Republicans will tolerate it because they're like, well, the Democrats do it, too. In fact, Democrats do it way better than Republicans do. We outspent Trump by $500 million in the presidential election. Still lost, right? So really good at fundraising, not so good at winning. We need to focus on winning. And this is a winning issue. We could end money in our primaries and just have it based on public debate and open discourse instead of who can raise the most money to buy TV ads. But we don't, right? So if we did that, we would end the whataboutism and say, look, Republicans, we're taking money out of our primaries. Why aren't your elected Republicans doing the same thing? And I think that's a winning issue.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Yeah, on that vein, in many interviews, you discuss campaign finance reform not just as an issue, but the issue. Why is this issue so important? I think you touched on that a little bit, but I guess more so maybe you could talk about what you plan to do once in office to address this issue.
Yeah, so it's not a single issue campaign, it's an every issue campaign because every issue goes back to it. Either it's for one of two reasons. One, people are profiting off of our broken system and they don't want us to fix it, like big oil and gas, the automobile industry, they profit off of our addiction to fossil fuels. So that's why nothing happens with renewable energies or climate change. The other one is to fund the things that we would want, like Medicare for all or universal child care or federally funded public education. In order to pay for those things, we have to increase our tax revenue. And in order to increase our tax revenue, we'd have to tax the ultra-wealthy their fair share. And they're the ones who are contributing to all the campaigns. So why would they contribute to politicians who are going to try and take their money, right? So they're protecting their profits by controlling our elections. And that's why money touches nearly every issue. And so when I get elected, I actually have a joint resolution that I have written, mostly plagiarized from other joint resolutions that have been introduced. But that's just like teaching. You don't reinvent the wheel. You beg, borrow, and steal from other teachers, right? So I took that principle, and I have a joint resolution that I would intend to propose on the floor of the U.S. Senate. And between November 3rd, the general election, and January 3rd, when I get sworn in, I would take that resolution in this bus. And just like I canvassed in the red counties, I would canvass in the red states. On my way to Washington, D.C., I'd have rallies, and I can literally point to this piece of paper and say, I am on my way to the Senate floor to drop this in the hopper, to propose an amendment to the Constitution to take money out of politics. You need to call your senator right now and let them know I'm on my way, because we need to have the support. We'll rally the support so by the time we get there, we can start with the ball rolling.
Sounds very Mr. Smith in Washington.
Yes, well, I know, I am a walking Frank Capra movie, but that's what we need right now. We need a Frank Capra character because we've reached a critical failure. Just turn on the news, right? Democracy has reached a critical failure, and we need to pull the e-brake and insert the Frank Capra character to get some real reform done.
Yeah, I hear you. Speaking truth to power. Yeah. So Kevin, one question I wanted to ask you when we're talking about, not only people you want to work with in Congress, but who are people you admire as like presidents, politicians that have served in our country? And I've been thinking about that a lot lately because in this pessimistic time we live in, it feels like we need people in our own country to look up to. So yeah, I'm just wondering, who are some people that you look up to?
So for this race, there's one senator in particular that is a big source of inspiration, and he's right behind you. No one knows who he is. Do you know who he is?
Is that Edley Stevenson?
No, it's close though. I mean, yeah, they do look kind of similar. His name is Joseph Bristow.
Okay, never heard of him.
Yeah, most people haven't. He's a progressive from Kansas back when the parties were realigned, so he was a Republican, and he ran on a single issue, and that was to amend the Constitution to change the election of senators from the state houses to the direct popular vote we have today. Now, he did not hold public office before running for the U.S. Senate. He never held elected office. He ran on that issue. He won on that issue, and then he served a single term in the United States Senate. And in that single term, he got passed through both houses, and saw ratified into the Constitution the 17th Amendment, which allows me to appeal directly to you instead of the General Assembly in Springfield to run for the United States Senate.
Wow.
So in a single term, he amended the Constitution. He fundamentally changed our democracy. No one knows who he is, but he helped root out corruption that was happening at the state houses and then filtering up to the U.S. Senate. That's what I want to do.
So that's what you modeled your campaign on.
Right.
That's what I want to do. Beautiful. Any presidents that you admire?
Well, obviously Abraham Lincoln over here. This is his portrait from when he was on this campaign trail, running for the very same seat in 1858. It's been fun following in his footsteps. I probably don't have to tell you why Lincoln is such a revolutionary figure, so I'll spare you on that. But another little-known one, Hunter S. Thompson.
I know Hunter S. Thompson.
Yeah, good. Hunter S. Thompson, aside from being a great author, do you know that he ran for sheriff?
No, I didn't know that.
So he ran for sheriff in Pitkin County, Colorado, which is Aspen. And so the sheriff's department was very much like jackboot, like hippie beaters. And, Hunter S. Thompson was the opposite, peace, love, and everything, and, counterculture. And so he's like, well, screw you, I'm going to run for sheriff. And he ran for sheriff, and he lost by, less than 100 votes. So he didn't become sheriff. But the next cycle, his campaign manager ran for, I think, city council and won. And then a couple other people from his campaign ran for city council and then the sheriff's department, and they all won. And so in 10 years, they completely reshaped the Pitkin County Sheriff's Department. And that was because Hunter S. Thompson led a revolutionarily radical campaign to end what they saw as, injustice and corruption. And even though he didn't win, he was successful. The end goal was met. Yeah. And so it's a good lesson for me that even a campaign that doesn't result in electoral success can be successful, right? And that's what the whole purpose of this. Stay moored to your principles to move the needle, even if it doesn't elevate your personal career. If it moves the needle towards taking money out of politics, making our democracy work, then this will all be worth it.
Yeah, well, it's interesting about change that's slow over time and moving the needle is the abolition movement in the United States.
Totally, Alice Paul right there.
Yeah, and it's fascinating. I've been learning about this a lot recently, but it was over 100-year kind of progress, but slowly moving the needle, continuing to protest, continually say no. Immediately, right? There weren't politicians that grabbed onto it. But then, towards the 1910s, finally it got some political headway in the progressive era. Sometimes it's just the movement has the fire and it just needs to keep it lit for the right people to come along to push it.
Right. Yeah. So those are probably the two biggest figures that I like to talk about. I also love Thaddeus Stevens up here. He was, the radical Republican who had the audacity to believe that all people are created equal.
How crazy!
And he helped pass the first Civil Rights Act of, I think, 1867. And the Supreme Court said it was unconstitutional. Isn't that incredible? The Supreme Court set us back a whole century, right? We passed the first Civil Rights Act shortly after the Civil War, and it had to take a century later in Dr. King and the Civil Rights Movement to pass it again. That's the power of the Supreme Court, which is another conversation we could have.
Yeah, definitely a lot of conversation on that one.
Yeah,
thank you for sharing that. That's great insight. Yeah, so moving on, which members of Congress have you developed relationships with? If elected, who are some members you would be excited to work with?
So I'd be really excited to work with Bernie Sanders and AOC because I really like the effort that they've been putting in to barnstorm across these red states on their anti-oligarchy tour. And I think we have to do something similar to get this amendment passed because we have to pass it through 2/3 of the House and the Senate and then 3/4 of the state houses. So I forgot I didn't answer the first part of the question. So while I was in D.C., I got to get to know a couple members of Congress. Got to know Seth Moulton, who is a Marine, but he also is running for the U.S. Senate right now as well in Massachusetts.
Oh, interesting.
He will no longer be in the House of Representatives. He might be in the Senate. We'll see if he can unseat Ed Markey. That's who he's going against. I also got to know some Republican members of Congress while I was working, helping with the evacuation of Afghanistan. And Neil Dunn was one of them. In fact, he proposed a piece of legislation that I fully support, which is the right to repair. And it had 21 co-sponsors, 21 Republicans and 21 Democrats. And this is a great example of money in politics affecting things. Like the lobby, the John Deere lobby, was able to kill that bill, even though it had robust bipartisan support, because we don't want to allow farmers and everyday Americans to just repair their stuff. We have to have these nuanced little computer chips that can only be repaired in shop by the dealers. It's one of the best examples of how corporate interests are nickel and diming us in getting away with monopolistic control of different sectors.
Yeah, I follow this man, Louis Rossman. I think I brought him up to you before in our last talk, but yeah, he's very huge on right to repair, and that bill specifically with John Deere, yeah, it's disgusting what they do and how you can't repair it yourself. You have to send the machines 300 miles to the nearest repair shop, and you can imagine that happens during harvest. You're screwed. What do you do?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, no, right to repair is super important, and that's another issue I feel is very bipartisan.
Totally.
In a lot of the circles I've been. That it doesn't seem like a Republican versus Democrat. It seems like an up versus down uniting issue.
And yet, we have a Republican House of Representatives, we have a Republican President, we have a Republican Senate, and in this Congress, a Republican introduced this bipartisan bill with bipartisan support, and it doesn't get a vote on the floor. Why? Why is that, Mike Johnson? What's happening?
Wonder why.
Who's pulling the strings?
Okay, moving on. As this administration has taken over 200,000 jobs from women following the Project 2025 playbook, how would you secure equality for women? Would you support equal rights for women?
I think we need to put the ERA into the Constitution. And I know that there's this push since we had the last state ratify it after the sunset period to we need to put it into the Constitution. I fully support that. But also, let's just do it again. Run it back. Send it back to the state legislatures, and let's put everyone on notice.
Yeah.
You're not for equal rights for women? Like what? Let's get we need to get the ERA into the Constitution.
Yeah, this is 2026.
Yeah.
And by ERA, you mean equal rights?
Yes, equal rights.
Yeah, no, totally agree there. There's a lot of things that should have been done years ago, right? And that is definitely one of them. And I like the idea of putting it into the Constitution, right? As a right. It shouldn't be something we debate every few years. It should be something that's enshrined into the legislation of this country.
Yeah.
The heart. Okay, moving on to some other policies. So I know you're a proponent of Medicare for All.
Mm-hmm.
How can we get Medicare for All passed? What would your role be in doing so once elected to Congress?
Well, it's a great example of money being a critical issue in politics and stopping these things from happening. So you often hear Democrats say, there's no reason in the richest country in the world that we can't provide health care to everyone. There is a reason. It's the $1.7 trillion health industry and the $250 million they pour into our election cycles every single year. To Democrats and Republicans, right? Because there are people who are profiting off of our broken healthcare system. So before we can even dream of getting Medicare for All, I would love to see Medicare for All on the floor to get a vote. But I truly do not believe, even if Democrats control the House, Senate, and the White House, I don't believe we will get that until we have removed or insulated our government from the corrupting influence of money. Because there's so much money to be made off our broken healthcare system that those people who are getting those profits and increasing their wealth, they're not just going to let this happen.
Yeah, so underscoring the money and politics issue, it all goes back to that central root of evil.
Yes.
I get where you're coming from. So in this current authoritarian climate in the U.S., many people feel the sentiment that their vote doesn't matter, or much of what they do day to day has no effect on the direction of this country. What message would you like to share to those people feeling hopeless in these times?
I mean, one, I don't think they're wrong. I mean, I feel that way too as a voter. Does our voice really matter? Does it have an impact? And as we talked about earlier, when it talks about we talked about popular opinion and money and which one really moves the needle on policy, it's money. And so my message of hope to these people is the whole foundation of this campaign. Is I'm trying to give people something honest to latch onto, to push over the finish line. People will look at this campaign and say, this is impossible. You can't win without millions of dollars. Well, all the people in this office here, every single one of them was told at some point in their lives that what you're doing is impossible. But where would our society be if every time we heard it's impossible, we just gave up? It's not only is it possible, we don't have a choice. So I tell people, this campaign is your vehicle of hope. This bus is our vehicle of hope. That we can make our democracy work for all of us, where our voices are equal and they all matter, but that will only happen when we insulate it from the tremendous wealth that the very top few of this country have.
On a related note, what can Democrats in Congress do in moments like right now to push back against the Trump administration? If you were elected, what are some actions you would pursue in holding the Trump administration accountable?
The difficult truth here is that we can't really do anything until we win majorities, right? This is where the Democratic Party critically failed. Not only did they let Trump return to the White House, they lost the Senate and the House in the process. And now you have all these Democrats who've been in office for 5, 10, 15 years saying, well, I'm the fighter. I'm going to fight Trump. They're all up for re-election. How have you been fighting Trump? If you have been fighting, you haven't been fighting hard enough, or you're not fighting. So either way, you have to go, because that's my biggest criticism of my opponents in this race who have served in the House of Representatives, getting up there and talking about how they're going to fight in the Senate. You haven't fought in the House. In order to win, we need to win majorities. How do we win majorities? What's the winning issue? Money in politics. Let's be the party that's going to disenthrall our democracy from money in politics. That's how we win the independence. That's how we end the whataboutism. But no, we are so focused as a party on just making sure that those in positions of power and those in elected office maintain that influence, that they don't want competitive elections. They don't want to democratize the process. They want money to control things because they know how to get it and others don't. That's a simple fact. And if they just change that, we would win majorities. If they would let go of their influence and democratize our primaries at the Democratic Party, we could be a winning party, and we would win the independents, and we would win the majorities that we would need to then hold ICE accountable and prosecute those who have been trampling on rights and using excessive force, and reestablish an independent Department of Justice, hold everyone in the Epstein files who committed sexual violence accountable. All of these things. We can't do those things until we win majorities. That's the simple truth of the matter. You can be like Cory Booker and get up there and give a filibuster for 25 hours, but it's not going to do anything unless we have majorities, right? And we get majorities by living our values and taking money out of politics.
Yeah, I know you said something about your opponents, and I'm supposed to be impartial here as the interviewer, but sure. I know I was reading something about Raja when I was learning about him serving in the House. He's only introduced something like 4 pieces of legislation.
So he has no. Is
that not true?
So here's the trick that members of Congress do. They will introduce hundreds of bills, and they have no intention of driving them forward or pursuing them. But they introduce a bill, and then they will put out a press release, and it makes it look like they're doing something. But look, I introduced a bill today because this was in the news, and I know people are mad about it, and I'm doing something. It's never going to get a committee vote. It will never get out of committee. They're just introducing bills to send out press releases. So he's introduced hundreds of bills. But bills that he has sponsored that have become public law, only 4 in his last 5 terms in Congress, and they all rename post offices. So what have you been doing? You've been fighting, or you've been renaming post offices. If we need to rename a post office, I know who to call. But I don't think we need you in the United States Senate. We can handle the renaming of post offices on our own.
Yeah, there could be a contest for that, maybe.
Yeah.
No, not gonna lie, that's pretty abysmal.
But he has raised $19 million, or he brought $19 million into this race. So what do you think he was doing the last 10 years? He wasn't sponsoring legislation. He was fundraising, right? So that he could, for the inevitability when Senator Durbin was going to retire because of age, right? He would only be able to serve for so long, right? And he knew that, and he was fundraising for this moment. We could use that $19 million to flip one of the House seats, one of the red House seats in Illinois. But no, let's waste that money on a Democratic primary. That's why it's so hypocritical to me. You can't say that you're fighting and you're trying to win back the House. If you're trying to win back the House, use that $19 million to help a downstate candidate flip Mary Miller's district.
Now, well said. On that note, so there was a recent debate that you were kept out of, right? And your opponents were included?
Yes. Well, there were 2 debates. There was the ABC 7 televised debate, and then there was the WBEZ University of Chicago debate.
Right, and you were kept out of both of those.
Yes.
Can you speak a little bit more about that?
Yeah, they specifically designed the criteria to only include those 3 candidates. They had a number of reasons or number of criteria that you had to meet. But the last one was the catch-all. Regardless if you met the other ones, because you had to meet all these criteria. The last one was you have to be in the top 3 fundraisers. Now, normally, if you're going to use money as a metric, they would put like a threshold, like you have to raise $100,000 or $1 million, whatever it is, and make it objective so that people can aim and reach for it. But not only do they not make an objective one, they published this criteria knowing who the top 3 fundraisers were. right? And so it was designed to specifically keep someone like me out. Now, if they took the 4 top fundraisers, I would be invited. But somehow they landed on the number 3. And does it have anything to do with that these 3 are also the ones with millions of dollars that are going to pay ABC7 for TV advertising that's going to increase the shareholder value of its parent company, Disney? You see, it's literally pay to play. It's literally pay to play. And it's why couldn't we just have invite all the legally qualified candidates to a debate and then do an independent poll after that? And then use the results of that poll to say, okay, these top 3 of the poll are going to get invited to the next debate, right? Wouldn't that be more democratic? Wouldn't that be more equal? Give everyone a fair shot and then let the people elevate the people they want to see? No, it's money. We're only going to take the top 3 fundraisers.
Here it comes back again to money.
I mean, and think about it. I could be polling in first place. I could be leading by 60 points. But if I'm not in the top 3 fundraisers, I don't get a seat at the table.
Yeah, that's
how absurd is that? Why are we rewarding money over everything else? If I was polling at 65% and I'm not allowed to debate because I'm on the top 3 fundraisers, isn't that absurd?
Yeah, no, I hear you. Another example of money controlling everything. You had a pretty interesting strategy with some of these debates, right?
Yeah.
Parking your bus out in front.
Yeah, and Shirley Chisholm up there. In the words of Shirley Chisholm, if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. And I think all these organizations, I think, just assumed that I was going to be quiet and play nice. But no, this is not the democracy I risked my life for in Afghanistan. This is not the democracy I taught to my students. And I'm going to stand up for my democracy and what I think is equal and fair. And it simply is not. Our democratic primary is not an equal or fair process. It only rewards those with money. And that is not democracy. That is oligarchy.
All said. Okay, I think I have one more question for you. So my question for you is, the Gaza war has been a polarizing issue for many Americans over the last few years, especially among Democrats, with establishment Democrats offering seemingly unwavering support for Israel. Recent polling shows this changing among Americans, with an October Pew Research poll showing 60% of Americans have a negative view of the Israeli government now. You yourself have been critical of Israel's role in the Gaza war. Can you go into detail on your stance on the Gaza war? Do you support the ICC's charges against Netanyahu and the members of his government? Should the U.S. hold Israeli officials accountable for what was declared a genocide by the UN Human Rights Council?
So I do agree with the ICC and the charges, and I do believe that the Israeli government has committed a genocide against the Palestinian people in Gaza. If we're going to go by international law, I don't think it's the United States' responsibility to try and hold another state accountable unilaterally, but I do believe that we should hold them accountable under the ICC. The challenge is neither the United States nor Israel are parties to the ICC. But I do believe we can use our soft power to leverage Israel to do what we want. And so I believe we need to stop all funding and transfer of military equipment to Israel until there is a new government elected in Israel that recognizes the state of Palestine and invest in good faith in rebuilding Gaza for the Palestinian people, and allowing for, in accordance with UN General Assembly Resolution 194, the right to return of Palestinian people. Once we have that, once we have a government that recognizes those things, then we can start investing again in Israel and building the bilateral relationship between the United States and Israel and the regional relationships to foster peace and stability for all peoples in the region. But right now, the current regime in Israel has indicated they have no interest in that. And so if they're not interested in that, we cannot continue to fund them.
Yeah, no, that's a very fair critique of the situation. It is very complex not being part of that ICC, and also just how tied up our governments are. You're right, we do have tremendous soft power, so I can understand your stance.
Well, and I think it would be good too. The damage that Trump is doing on the international stage is tremendous. Some of it might even be irreparable. Like we saw, Canada is basically seeing a world without the United States, where they embrace Europe only and they form their own bloc. So one way I think that we can repair our international relations after Trump is to subject ourselves to the ICC and ratify the Rome Statute. And Bill Clinton signed the Rome Statute, but the Senate failed to ratify it. As a senator, I would push to ratify the Rome Statute and hold ourselves accountable under the ICC. I don't know why people would want to protect war criminals just because they're Americans. Right? We should not want that. And by us subjecting ourselves to the ICC, we can then get Israel to subject itself to the ICC and join the Rome Statute, and then we can have justice.
On a related note, how do you see yourself working on this issue with members of Congress that do take money from AIPAC?
I don't think we're going to see eye to eye. And so again, this goes back to the core issue. Money in politics. AIPAC is a phenomenal example, not just AIPAC, but the Israel lobby in general, as to why after October 7th we saw the response that Israel did, and we just sat back under both Democrat and Republican administrations and said, this is fine, you can carpet bomb civilians. I think AIPAC and the Israel lobby is a great example of that. So we need to remove that influence. We need to remove the corrupting influence of money in politics so we can elect majorities who are not beholden to AIPAC, J Street, the Israel lobby, so we can come together on our shared values of international relations, of individual rights, the rule of law, democracy, and liberty, and share those values and lead by those values, subject ourselves to the ICC, and then make Israel subject itself to it. Because I think the majority of Americans, as you pointed out, are looking at what's happening and say, this is wrong. There needs to be accountability. So we need to elect those people as opposed to the ones who are ignoring it and beholden to moneyed special interest.
I'll speak for myself. When October 7th happens, and, not knowing much about the history, I was kind of quiet the first year. And then over the last few years, it's become much harder to ignore and also just much more apparent that it is a genocide.
I mean, even the human rights organizations in Israel itself are calling it a genocide. The UN has called it a genocide. I mean, it's
a genocide.
You can't hide. You can't hide from it. You can't hide from the truth.
Right. Is it true? I was reading some of your opponents have taken Israel lobby money.
So,
can you speak to that at all?
I last time I looked at Juliana Stratton's FEC, I did not see any money from AIPAC or J Street.
Okay.
Or there's a Democratic one as well. It's got a Democratic name here. But what I will say is Juliana Stratton's co-chair of her finance committee is Lee Rosenberg, who was the former president of AIPAC and a current board member of AIPAC. So, because AIPAC is rather unpopular right now, especially in progressive circles, which Juliana Stratton is trying to carry the progressive banner, despite the fact that I was endorsed by Illinois progressives.
Nice look into the camera.
So she might not be receiving money directly from AIPAC, but when you have the president of AIPAC as the co-chair of your finance committee, you don't need to get money from AIPAC. You need to get money from the people who give money to AIPAC.
Right?
Because that's not going to pop up as AIPAC on the FEC filing. So you get the big donors, instead of having them donate to AIPAC, have them donate to Juliana Stratton's campaign. And she has not come out to say that she will not take money from the Israel lobby.
Speaking of Ms. Stratton, I know there was a recent controversy with her not taking money from corporations, but donors, right?
So she's campaigning on not taking corporate PAC money, which is deliberately misleading for a number of reasons. Because, sure, she's right. She doesn't take corporate PAC money, which I applaud. But under FEC rules, corporate PACs can only donate $5,000 to an individual candidate. Individuals can donate $3,500. So she received $5,000 from a corporate PAC from Marquee Incorporated. She returned it because she's not taking corporate PAC money, but she did take $21,000 from the C-suite members of Marquee Incorporated. So the people who run and profit from the company all made max individual contributions to her. The first people who donated to her campaign were billionaires, and now we have a billionaire, our governor, who just dropped $5 million into a super PAC to run ads on her behalf.
I heard about that.
So of course, who needs corporate PAC money when you have a billionaire who just dropped $5 million in a super PAC for you? That's why it's all deliberately misleading to try to say that I'm the money out of politics candidate. But at the end of the day, big money is going to put you into office, so how can we expect you to hold big money accountable? How can we expect you to take their power away when their powers will put you into office? Back to your first question, that's what separates me. I know that we will never get money out of politics so long as we continue to elect people beholden on big money, putting and keeping them in office.
Mm-hmm. No, well said. Yeah, at a certain point, it just feels kind of like a slap in the face. Like, how stupid do you think we are?
I know, and that's why. And I've been very critical of it. And some people say, "Why don't you pick on Raja more?" And well, Raja to me is so much the boogeyman when it comes to campaign finance reform. Like, he's the antithesis. I feel like I don't even have to say it out loud, but yes.
Yeah, I was looking through his FEC filings, and I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, he'll take money from anyone. So it's like, of course, I'm very critical. He is the poster child. He's central casting of like a bought and paid for politician. But Juliana Stratton is different because she is painting herself as something else. Raja doesn't pretend to be, the money out of politics person. Juliana does. And that's why, remember Dante's Inferno, I think the 9th layer of hell was for treachery and treason, right? Because that's like the worst thing you can do is betray your trust, betray what you really mean, lie essentially. And so that's why I take it personal, because my whole campaign is based on that, being radically authentic and not being beholden to donors. She campaigns on that, but then gets to fund all these ads because she is being funded by ultra wealthy people, billionaires, and corporate interests.
Right. No, it's a huge issue, and I really like, to your campaign, I like how central that is around everything, because it is true. Like, you can't change anything without first addressing the root cause of the issue. And I really liked when I was looking through your FEC filings, and I did like that. You really are holding true to that. You're just taking individual small contributions, and I think that's very commendable. And one of the reasons I wanted to interview you is interviewing politicians that hold integrity so close, but also demonstrate it, not just say it, demonstrate it. I think that's a good example of how you're running your campaign. You're choosing the road less traveled. Yeah, and I hope it pays off in March.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's hard because people they don't take you seriously. And then they use post hoc reasoning to say why. Right? So because I don't have millions of dollars in my campaign coffers, people will look at me and be like, oh, what experience do you have? Don't mind, serving overseas in the Marine Corps Infantry or teaching in Chicago public schools. They'll try to point to these things. But if I had $5 million, would you be saying those things? No, you'd be inviting me to the debate. So
right.
And all other things remain the same, except I have $5 million. People will look at me different. That is not democracy.
The red carpet.
Yes, that's not democracy. That is oligarchy at its purest form. We are only elevating those with money or access to that money. And in the words of Abraham Lincoln, he once said, I cannot join the political contest on the basis of money. 1, because it is wrong, and 2, I do not have it and cannot find out how to get it. That's me. So it's like, 1, it's wrong, and 2, I don't have the money and I don't know how to get it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people our age have that problem too.
Right. And it's like, that's how our democracy should be. It should be, you should be able to run for office. Any office you want, right? You should be able to run for the State House or Congress or the Senate if you want. But if you don't have money, you can't. That's what our process says. Even for the State House, you need hundreds of thousands of dollars. Mm-hmm. It's ridiculous. That's not what our democracy should be about. And that's why this whole campaign is about us. Trying to set the example, live our values, and provide people something that's real.
Well said. I wanted to ask you a couple more specifics about school time. So I guess my question for you is, can you go into detail about what it was like being a teacher? What insights you gained from that about people in general? How did you get into teaching? And, as a teacher myself, it's something that I'm very
being a teacher was the most meaningful work I've ever done, for sure. I became a teacher because I had a rough go when I was a kid with my family life. My brother suffered with addiction, mental health, undiagnosed mental health issues, and ultimately resulted in him overdosing and dying at the age of 23.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah, he had a pretty tragic life, and that made life at home hard. And what helped me get through it was my own teachers in high school, and so that kind of led me down the path of becoming a teacher. And that was still the most meaningful work I've ever done, and I absolutely love it. And I have so much respect, tremendous respect for public school teachers, because it is such an arduous profession. You have to do multiple jobs at once. You have to lesson plan, you have to teach, you have to grade, you have to coach, you have to mentor, you have to be someone, a shoulder to cry on. You have all of these things. All of these things, and you have to do it all in an 8-hour school day. So I have tremendous respect for teachers, and that really helped shape my understanding of social justice. So we talk about, being a veteran, I saw how our government can work for its citizens. On the flip side of that, teaching in Chicago public schools, I feel like I served on the front lines of social justice, and I got to see hunger, poverty, crime, racial inequity up front every day in my classroom. And it's one thing to read about an issue, but it's another thing when you see it every day and you have a very intimate experience with it. And I think if more people had that experience, I think we would err more on the side of charity than the cold indifference that many people lean on.
Yeah, I'm not a public school teacher, but I've taught music lessons for years. I worked with John Hersey High School, helped with their marching bands. And teaching in classes, and one thing that struck me as a teacher is when I have a trouble student, like a student, that doesn't get something right away, or maybe has behavioral issues. I see so many teachers in my own life, having been that kid, teachers that shoot people away. And I always try to not be that, because what I found in my years of teaching, having taught probably close to 80 students, 100 students, a lot of times those students have a gift. If you give up on them, right, that's a life that's being
Totally.
neglected. And I've been shocked by how many times when I've had a student that has been an issue, if I just understand where they're coming from, how much the student will just bloom.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if you have any students that stand out to you in your personal life teaching.
Yeah, I do. And I think those are my favorite resume accomplishment bullet points, are the success of my students. One in particular, it's funny what you said. I think you're right. It's almost like a lot of these students that seem difficult to get to, there's a tipping point. It's almost like that, that little meme. If you only dig just a little bit further, you'll get to the diamond, right?
Yeah.
It's like if you just push a little bit further, you're going to reach the tipping point.
Usually I see with those gambling jokes.
Yeah, I know. I don't have a gambling problem. The only problem is I'm not gambling right now. Yeah. So there's one student in particular where I felt like I couldn't reach him, and we finally broke through and reached a tipping point. And then he started to come to me and talk to me. He didn't want to talk to our counselors because all of our counselors were women, and I felt like he just had a hard time connecting with them as a young adolescent boy.
Okay.
And he came and talked to me. I'm not a trained therapist. So I was just listening, right? I would just listen to him. He just was totally non-judgmental. And I worked with him for 2 years, and then I got deployed to Afghanistan, and we maintained a relationship over correspondence and we were writing letters to each other. And he opened up to me in a lot of these letters about some personal stuff that had happened to him, and that was the source of a lot of the problems that he was experiencing. And that was a major breakthrough. And once we got through that, we started coaching him. Another teacher worked with him, and he eventually joined the Army. And it was the best thing for him. It got him out of a bad situation that he was at home and started making income. He went to Kuwait, and he had a very successful career in the Army. And it's just so many teachers have given up on him. And I understand why. It's just, as a teacher, you can only give so much. And, luckily I was just a young, single, no kids teacher. And so I had a lot of stuff to give. A lot of teachers, when they have their own families and such, they can't give as much as other people can. So I understand why some people give up on students, because it's triage at the end of the day. But he was definitely one of my favorite success stories of seeing him make it through.
That's beautiful. Is he voting for you?
You better. He is an Illinois resident, so yeah.
That's a really touching story. I haven't been teaching long enough to have a student developing like that, but I can relate. There's a couple students that you find that tipping point, you find what clicks with them, and suddenly they're a lot more easy to work with.
I know, it's great. And it's always like a small thing. There was another student in, she was a 8th grader. I had a mix of 8th grade and 7th grade. It was November, and by November they had ran out 2 teachers of the building. November, this was a classroom from hell. It was like the worst 7th and 8th graders put together with hormones raging. And there was one student that was a ringleader of all. She would stir everything up. And one day I was like, okay, what do you want to do with your life? What do you want to, when you grow up, what do you want to do? And she's like, well, I was thinking about being a teacher. I was like, you want to be a teacher? Honey, let me tell you about this thing called karma, because you're my karma from when I was a little jerk, when I was a student. Now, think what's going to happen to you when you become a teacher. And that blew her mind. And it's that one thing snapped.
Yeah.
And she was a perfect student after that. It's so crazy how those small tipping points can really, really just make a switch, and it changes the entire classroom.
Yeah, no, good. Well said. Great. Well, I think that's all the questions I have for you. I guess what I want to do is just give you a few minutes to pitch your campaign. Feel free to just share.
I'll speak directly to the camera. The final pitch I make when canvassing across the state is, this is the Field of Dreams campaign. Started with an idea that if I build it, people will come. And people have been coming. A lot of people look at this campaign and say it's impossible because I haven't raised millions of dollars to spend on advertising. But that's precisely the point. So you have a choice in this election. You can choose to vote based on who has raised the most money that you think can win, or you can choose to do the impossible. Like all the people up in this bus who are told what you're trying to do is impossible. Which side do you want to be on? The side that reinforces our broken status quo, or the side that makes the impossible possible? Because that's what I offer. And if you want to get involved, go to kevinryan.com. You can follow us on our socials there. You can sign up for our emails, and If you're really gung-ho and you want to put boots on the ground, you can sign up to door knock.
Nice pitch. Yeah, and don't forget about March 17th. Very important day.
That's right. I always forget to and vote. To vote, of course. Vote Kevin Ryan. It's top of the ballot. You can't miss it.
All right, Kevin. Thank you so much.
Thank
really
you.
nice talking with you today.
Yeah, same.
Great. All right. Bye.